By the end of this lecture, learners will be able to define the meaning of structuralism in linguistics. Describe the key tenets of structuralism in linguistics. Explain the main contribution of structuralism in linguistics. Identify the importance of structuralism in linguistics. Determine the strengths and weaknesses of structuralism in linguistics. Hello everybody, and welcome to the UNIV-ENGLISH channel. If you have not been here before, then, welcome to the UNIV-ENGLISH channel. If you're interested in learning more about linguistics, then make sure to hit the subscribe button, and also smash the notification bell, to receive notifications of when I produce more videos like this. For more information, you are invited to visit my website, english.mokerma.com. So, let's begin with this question. How can you define the term structuralism in linguistics? Structuralism is a philosophical perspective that began in 1920s, initially in Europe. The main goal is to focus on the study of structures that constitute meaning in culture. It posits that elements of human culture must be understood in terms of their relationship to a larger, underlying structure. To that end, structuralism derives from the theories and methods of various social sciences, including anthropology, sociology, and psychology. This theory was based on the idea that all human beings share a common underlying structure of thought, which is what allows us to understand and communicate with one another. Structuralists believed that society could only be understood by analyzing its constituent parts and their relationships. This structure is composed of various elements, such as language, symbols, and meanings. Definition of structuralism. According to the American Heritage Dictionary of the English Language, 2016, structuralism is a method of analyzing phenomena, as in anthropology, linguistics, psychology, or literature, chiefly characterized by contrasting the elemental components of the phenomena in a system of binary opposition and examining how the elemental components are combined to make larger units. Collins English Dictionary 2014 states that structuralism is an approach to linguistics that analyzes and describes the structure of language, as distinguished from its comparative and historical aspects. Structuralism is an approach to the study of language that concentrates on its internal structure, as opposed to the history of its development or its relationships with other languages. The key tenets of structuralism in linguistics. Structuralism is a theory of linguistic study that was developed by Ferdinand de Saussure in the late 19th century. The key tenets of structuralism are that language is a system of signs, that meaning is derived from the relationship between signs, and that spoken language is a manifestation of this system. The key tenets of structuralism are: 1. All languages have a common underlying structure. 2. This structure is made up of basic elements, or units, that can be combined in different ways to create meaning. 3. This structure is composed of smaller units called signs. 4. Language is a system that can be analyzed and described using scientific methods. 5. There is a direct relationship between the form of a particular language and its underlying structure. 6. The meaning of a sign is not inherent in the sign itself, but is determined by its relationship to other signs in the system. The genesis of structuralism. The history of structuralism in linguistics is a long and complicated one. Structuralism first came about in the late 19th century, when Ferdinand de Saussure developed his theory of semiotics. He argued that language is a system of signs. This theory would go on to form the basis for much of what would become structuralism. In the early 20th century, Edward Sapir and Leonard Bloomfield would develop their own theories on linguistics, which were heavily influenced by Saussure's work. They would eventually come to be known as the fathers of American structuralism. It wasn't until the 1950s that structuralism really began to take off as a reaction to the theories of functionalism. Structuralists believed that society could only be understood by analyzing its constituent parts and their relationships. Structuralism has its roots in the work of Swiss linguist Ferdinand de Saussure, who argued that language is made up of signs that have no inherent meaning but are instead assigned meaning by people within a culture. Structuralism had a major influence on 20th-century linguistics, particularly in the US. However, it fell out of favor in the 1970s, replaced by more cognitive approaches to language. Characteristics of structuralism in linguistics. One of the most important characteristics of structuralism is that it focuses on the structure of language, rather than on the meaning of words. This means that structuralists are more interested in how words are used in a sentence, and in the relationships between words, than in what the words mean. Another characteristic of structuralism is that it attempts to find underlying patterns in language. For example, a structuralist might look at the way different languages use different word order to express the same meaning. Three main characteristics of structuralism may be singled out. 1. Wholeness. Structuralism can be seen as holistic because it focuses on the whole phenomena rather than its parts, which are more studied in functionalistic approaches. Saussure's theory of language is based on two main principles: 1. The dichotomy between langue and parole, language as a whole and language in use; 2. The idea of the arbitrary relationship between a sign and its meaning. 2. Transformation. In structuralism, transformation is the process by which one structure is changed into another. The term transformation refers to a process by which one linguistic form is converted into another. Transformations are a central part of many linguistic theories, including those that focus on grammar, phonology, and semantics. Transformations can be used to generate new sentences from existing ones, to change the meaning of a sentence, or to convert one sound into another. 3. Self-regulation. Self-regulation in linguistics investigates how people use language to regulate their own behavior. This includes studies of both verbal and nonverbal communication. The main contribution of structuralism in linguistics. It is safe to say that the main contribution of structuralism was the introduction of the idea that language could be studied scientifically. This may seem like a small thing, but it opened up a whole new field of inquiry and sparked many subsequent theories. Before structuralism, linguistics was not really considered its own science. It was more of a branch of philosophy. This changed with the work of Ferdinand de Saussure, who is considered the father of structuralism. He argued that language was a system with its own rules and conventions. This may seem obvious now, but at the time it was a revolutionary idea. Structuralism also had a major impact on anthropology, sociology, and literary criticism. The theory helped scholars to see culture and society as systems with their own internal logic. It also showed how different texts could be interpreted in new ways. Strengths of structuralism in linguistics. Structuralism has made a significant contribution to the field of linguistics. Here are some of the most important contributions that structuralism has made. 1. Structuralism was one of the first approaches to linguistics, and it has had a major impact on the development of the field. 2. It has helped to establish linguistics as a separate discipline from other fields such as philosophy and psychology. 3. It has provided a scientific approach to studying the language. It provided a model for analyzing linguistic data. 4. Identify the basic elements of language and describe the ways in which they are related. 5. It showed that meaning is not inherent in words, but is determined by their relationships with other words in a sentence. 6. It has led to the development of various linguistic theories, such as transformational grammar and generative semantics. 7. It emphasized the importance of the social context of language use. 8. It has contributed to our understanding of how language acquisition occurs in children. 9. It has provided insights into how language can change over time, i.e., diachronic change. 10. It has helped us to understand the relationship between spoken and written language. 11. identify the basic elements of language and to describe the ways in which they are related. Weaknesses of structuralism in linguistics. Structuralism is one of the most prominent approaches in the field of linguistics. However, it has been critiqued for its lack of attention to context and its reliance on binary oppositions. Several weaknesses associated with this perspective may be singled out. 1. One of the key weaknesses of structuralism is that it relies on a limited view of language. It focuses on the surface structure of language, rather than on its deeper meaning. 2. One issue with structuralism is that it relies heavily on concepts that are not always easy to define, such as meaning and grammar. This can make it difficult to apply these concepts in a practical way. 3. Structuralism does not always take into account the context in which language is used, which can lead to oversimplifications of complex linguistic phenomena. 4. Because structuralism focuses on the structure of language itself rather than on the speakers who use it, it can be seen as artificial and impersonal. 5. Another weakness is that structuralism does not take into account the historical development of language. It looks at language as if it were a static entity, rather than something that has evolved over time. This means that the underlying structure of a language may be different today than it was in the past, or even from one speaker to another. 6. Structuralism also fails to explain why some languages are more complex than others. For example, English has a very complex grammar compared to Chinese, which has a much simpler grammar. These weaknesses ultimately limit the usefulness of structuralism in linguistics and make it difficult to apply in today's world. Conclusion. The term structuralism refers to a particular school of thought within linguistics that focuses on the structure of language. Structuralists believe that all languages are organized in a similar way and that the rules governing linguistic structure are universal. They seek to analyze language by breaking it down into its smallest units, example, phonemes, morphemes, syntactic rules. This structure is made up of smaller units can be combined in different ways to create different meanings. Structuralism was first developed by Ferdinand de Saussure in the early 20th century. Since then, it has been influential in both linguistics and anthropology. Structuralist ideas have been used to analyze a wide variety of phenomena, including social institutions, myths, and literary texts. Structuralism has made a significant contribution to the field of linguistics. However, there are several weaknesses associated with this perspective. Today, structuralism has been replaced by more modern linguistic theories, but its ideas are still influential. Many linguists believe that all languages share a universal underlying structure, despite their surface differences.